Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of my Cedar Point Recreation Park. As we've been doing a lot lately, it's time to make some more non-ride buildings. Today we're going to be focusing on Frontier Town. Everything backed by Steel Vengeance and Maverick and Cedar Creek Mine Ride. Lots of little food stalls, gift shops, scenery, various decorations. Lots of stuff to do back here, and it turns out that some of it is actually pretty complex. We've got some pretty bizarre building shapes back here that are going to be interesting to try to cram in here, especially as we want to also have footpaths that peeps can walk through to purchase food and drink and souvenirs. But there's a lot to do, so let's get started. In addition to putting together buildings for these food stalls, there's also a theater back here by Steel Vengeance. I've never actually been to this theater. There's a couple more theaters in the park too as well, but I decided to throw in an invisible 3D cinema to kind of replicate that. Also, it just helps give peeps something else to do back here. Might draw them towards the Steel Vengeance area. Other than that though, we're just working on a lot of building facades. Definitely not as much room in here to put down every single individual building that I would like to. If you've ever walked through here in real life or looked at photos, you've probably noticed that there is a lot going on. A lot of different building styles, different colors, different textures going on here. A lot of small buildings all kind of crammed together. And it's a real challenge to replicate that in RCT with the kind of granularity that we have here at the tile level. So my build does omit a couple things, a couple buildings that don't really have any function other than decoration. And many of the buildings are kind of squashed down in size so that they can fit alongside everything else that needs to go in here. As I always say, we have to make some concessions to reality in order to get some nice looking RCT. And I definitely won't say this is nice RCT either. As I've mentioned before, these are kind of first drafts of these buildings. I definitely want to spend some more time back here and clean things up. Retweak some things. I already know that there's a lot of buildings here that I don't like the finished products of, and I would like to replace these, or at least heavily overhaul them when I get a chance. But for this episode, I felt like I needed to at least just get down some basic structures, the basic look and feel, get the shapes down, so that I know what the finished product is going to look like, because we've got a nice outline of it here, even if some of the details are a little bit strange. That being said though, there are definitely some buildings here I do quite like how they turned out, at least for now. I may be overusing the mine theme wooden walls a little bit here, but I do feel like they fit the aesthetics of this area quite well. And of course they're colorable, which is nice. We can have several different shades of brown. There's some blue buildings over here, some tan ones. So you can get quite a bit of different variety with those, and it actually works out pretty well. As always, unfortunately, the roofs do wind up being a little bit dull, as I mentioned before, something that you see as an RCT player, but not as a person in real life. So lots of boring roofs here, especially with some of these larger buildings. So, as always, I throw down some HVAC decorations, but, you know, it does get a little repetitive sometimes. So I might have to poke around and see if I can think of some different ways we can kind of spice these roofs up a little bit. But I have been trying heavily to focus on the facades first as I build, and I think that's really helped things look a lot nicer as far as the end product goes. But yeah, on the whole, not a whole lot to talk about specifically with this episode, just throwing down lots of buildings, of course. I will say that it has helped flesh this area out a whole lot, and it's really nice to see some stuff in here aside from just weird footpaths with holes in it, and of course the dreaded red grid. Getting rid of a lot of that has been super nice. And as I throw down these building footprints now, I can see areas in the footpath that I can break up with just some like flower beds and stuff. There are a lot of flower beds around the footpath in real life. I'm not going to try to replicate all the locations of those exactly, because that would be a fool's errand. But it is nice to add some extra decoration in here to make it look not so much like just a big slab of tarmac. Not sure if it's going to help or hurt peep pathfinding at all, but I guess we'll see as this area gets more populated. As I mentioned before, I was having some issues with pathfinding as peeps for some reason weren't being able to find Millennium Force and getting real angry, so my guest count has dropped a bit. And I started using the Force Park rating cheat to keep everything at 999 because there were so many lost peeps. which is really unfortunate, and hopefully I can figure out what's going on with that pretty soon and get that fixed, because it's very frustrating knowing that a big chunk of your guests are angry for nothing that is my fault that I can tell. But that's not really relevant to what we're going over here anyway. But yeah, going back to what I said earlier, there are a couple of buildings here that I am quite fond of as they currently exist, and I don't think I'll need to tweak them a whole lot later on, such as the train station area. That one looks pretty classy with the black, green, and yellow accents on the building. It's a nice looking building in real life and not too hard to replicate here in RCT. Also the town hall building over by Skyhawk, making good use of the New York corner column thingies. Sometimes those are a bit too bulky to make good use of, but I feel like they worked pretty well here. On that building, I'm also using the seeker technique of a textured wall with a glass wall in front of it to get some nice colored looking textures on there, which is pretty cool. That's always fun to do. I think it turned out pretty nice. I should probably look into doing that a bit more, especially on some of the wall textures I'm using a whole lot, like the wooden mine walls. Might be able to get some cool effects with those, layering those together. You can absolutely get some really cool effects with layering walls in the game, and that's something I need to do a little bit more practice on. And I'll probably look into doing that a bit more as I do some off-camera work to kind of clean up these buildings. But yeah, I do quite like how the south side of Frontier Town looks. There's some pretty weird shaped buildings over here, like that pizza place and the ice cream place, and the glass blowing theater, which is a very bizarre circular layout. It's not bizarre if you consider that it's a big glass blowing furnace. It makes sense for what it is, but in RCT terms, it's pretty unique. Definitely won't say I have the best solution for that here, but I don't hate what I have. I don't think there's a whole lot more I'm going to do to clean that one up. But anyway, I think I'm just kind of rambling here. Very happy to get this whole Frontier Town area done. This is a huge section of the park. Very happy to get it knocked out. Not entirely sure how close we are to finishing Stage 5 yet. There's still a lot of miscellaneous buildings all around the place that we need to look at. A few things on the front midway, some staff areas in the middle of the park, and the entirety of the Frontier Trail Millennium Midway is still to do, so quite a bit left, I suppose, now that I think about it. So a few more episodes still to come there. But that's going to be all for this episode. As always, if you've got any comments, questions, or suggestions, please let me know. Thanks for watching.